Hi, today I'm going to teach you all how to do the jellyfish. The technique I'll be predominantly using is masking with the masking fluid. This is one of the most easiest things that you can draw. And as you see, I've got my masking fluid and I've already applied it here on the composition. There was a mistake initially when I was doing it. So when I recorded it, I forgot to actually take this part. So I'll show you with a small paper how that is done, where how you apply the masking fluid. So here it is. I've taken a paper. The paper I've used is rough. Uh, the paper I've used to draw is smooth, but now I'll be drawing with a rougher paper because that's what I have at hand. I just draw a simple semicircle with a few lines, and then for the tentacles I draw a few squiggly lines, and these are just indicators how the tentacles will go. There are some tentacles that will be a little more squiggly than the others, so you do that. What you have to keep in mind is it should flow smoothly, and picture the jellyfish moving in water and how the tentacles flow down, and that's how you have to draw it. Now I take my masking fluid and I will pour it onto a tray. By doing this, what I do is I'll ensure that the masking fluid in the bottle doesn't dry out, and here I just use a little bit without wasting the whole lot. And to apply the masking fluid on my picture, I take a sharp stick. Don't use a brush because the brush will get spoiled. I just take a little bit of the masking fluid on the tip and I smoothly apply it. On a rough paper, it'll take a bit more time, but on smoother watercolor paper, it just flows smoothly like any pen and ink. So the thing what the masking fluid does is it resists the paint and it doesn't let the paint in the areas that you have painted. So this is how it goes, and this is the picture as I showed you that I will be drawing. If you cannot draw the jellyfish, though it's one of the easiest things that you can draw, you can trace it and over that apply the masking fluid. What I will be using is predominantly blues. I'm going to do a monochromatic painting, singularly mostly the blues, and I would use a bit of green here and there. And what I do is I will apply a light wash over this. You can see how the masking fluid resists the paint, and the areas that I've applied the masking fluid, the paint won't stick to it. So it's a very light wash that I will be applying. Feel free, just let your strokes flow, add a bit of green to give the deep oceany look. If you don't want to use blues, you can use any colors that you want. You can use purples, blues, it's just your imagination in your picture, so you can go wild with it. So here what I do is I'm going to use various kinds of blues. I'm not going to stick to just one blue, one particular blue. So whatever you have, whatever is there with you, you can use those colors. And here you can see how beautiful it is when we apply, and how um, the paint sort of doesn't stick on the areas that we have applied masking fluid. Okay, there is one thing I forgot to tell you all, which is please let the masking fluid dry after you applied it to the picture. Once it's dry, then paint over it. On my picture, I am now darkening out the edges. The reason I like that is, as you can see, I have already applied a tape, a masking tape on my paper, so that you have a distinct border, and so I don't have to worry about my edges. So that forms the edges, and I'd like my edges to be slightly darker. It sort of gives a little bit more depth to the picture, creates an element of interest. And so this is what I'll do. So there are places that I can use a little bit more blue, a little bit more green, and just feel free and go ahead and do that. Now I have let the the paint dry for about 10 minutes. Um, this time I'm not going to use a wet on wet technique. I want it dry because I want my lines to be sharp, and I will be darkening certain areas of the jellyfish. I'll be working on the jellyfish and less on the background. So here what I'm going to do is, as I was mentioning, I want more depth. I want it to look more realistic and 3D. So I'm going to make the colors a bit more darker in certain areas. I'm going to add in a few more details. So depending on the jellyfish that you number of jellyfish, you can take your time and do. So here what I'm doing is, make your brush tip very thin and add in few more tentacles at the back, and make sure when you're doing this, the brush that you're using is, the point is very sharp. If you can't or don't have control over the brush like that, you can use a brush parker, because nowadays you get all those things and you can sort of use that, it's no harm. So here, what I'm doing is I'm going to add those very thin lines behind and make it look like there's some shadow behind of these tentacles. And once I remove the masking fluid, you can actually see how it brightens out. So here I have, I think, about 4 jellyfish that I've drawn. So for each of those, I will be doing this. So yeah, just go ahead and feel free and add those little details in and give it a little depth. So what I'm doing is making the jellyfish look more rounded, 3D, instead of a flat outline drawing. So I'm just shading it to give those details. Yeah, I'm just adding in between those white lines. As you can see, the places where I have applied the masking fluid will not take paint, and this is one of the easiest ways to make a picture look interesting, and I think one of the easiest to draw too. So again, I'm sort of adding in more tentacles. Yeah, now I'm doing that for my last one. Because it's at the edge, I want to darken it out a little bit. It's almost complete now. There's very little work to be done. So yeah, I will be adding in more of these details. I'm actually using Winsor & Newton half pans. You can use anything you want. And a 300 GSM, painting on a 300 GSM paper. So I've added in a bit of details. You can use it, do a little bit of water bubbles here and there. It's your picture, you can use your imagination, add anything. This is just an outline or guideline for you to draw the jellyfish. Now what I'm going to do now is, the paint is not really dry, but I want to show you by removing the masking fluid that is dry now, how this rubbery thing sort of, it's a rubber solution, so how it sort of comes away. And see, now you can see the white of the paper. It's beginning to look exciting and interesting. This is my favorite part. I love removing. It's like almost a magical process, just as magical as the jellyfish. So I'm doing it gently because my paper is not yet dry, but I'm so impatient to see that taken off. So yeah, use the tip of that to scrape off. Ideally, if it was completely dry, you could just run your hand or finger over it and it would just roll off. Sometimes my little son says it's the most satisfying thing to see. Yeah, so you can see how I'm removing it. Yeah, the paint is a bit wet over here. Shouldn't be as impatient, but you can let it dry completely before you do this process, and then you can remove that thing. Don't remove it when the paint is still wet. Sort of, yeah. How you test whether you have removed the masking fluid all over is just run your hand over the paper and you can feel it a little bumpy, and then you can just scratch that area off. Once I remove this, I will still do a bit of details so that the picture looks complete by itself. It still feels like there's something missing now for me. I'm the type, sometimes I finish a painting and then I look at it for some time and then I say, okay, it's complete, and put it away. And then maybe a few days later I come back and say, oh, I could have done this, and I add a few more details into it. So just feel free to do that. So I just sharpen some, darken some areas to bring out the jellyfish. I would like, ideally, I would like my edges to be a little bit more darker, but right now, as I said, I will roll the brush tip to see that it is really sharp, and then I'll do the details in. And I'm just running through some of the white areas. I just add a bit of blue so that it doesn't look stark white like that. So almost bringing out the colors, and yeah. So take your time, be patient. It's an extremely meditative process. After this, I will use a pen and I'll show you how you can, for those of you who are uncomfortable using the brush, you can use the pen and give in some details. It looks nice. It's still darkening because now I realized that there are some places that really need that depth. thing with watercolor is when you apply the paint is surely going to dry a shade lighter than what you have applied it on the paper. Um, so you should actually give a thought to that when you apply a paint. What you see when you apply, it's going to be at least 2 to 3 times lighter than that. So as I said earlier, I'll take the pen and I'll give in a few more details. Those of you who find that much easier to do, just go ahead and do it. There's no right or wrong in art. It's what you feel like doing. You are the artist and it is your work. So just go ahead, feel free and do it till you're satisfied with it. I will, at this point, there are some places that need to be a bit more darker. As I said, once the paint dries, you'll figure out that, oh, I need this place a little bit more darker. So this is the time to do that, that final just before you. After this, I'll remove out the masking tape that I've given at the edge so you can see the picture. Even this, please make sure you wait for the picture to dry and then take out. But I just want to show you now, so I'll just remove it immediately. Oh God, I've managed to smudge a bit over there, but that's okay. I sort of take white acrylic and apply it over there. Sort of covers it up later. So there it is. The jellyfish. I'm just adding a few more bubbles. Details to balance it out. That's about it. It's pretty much done. This is the picture of the jellyfish. Please do try it out and let me know how it was. If you'll have any doubts, if you want to ask me anything, please leave a comment below.